I opened my eyes when the alarm rang loudly next to my bed. It was 6:45 a.m., and I thought it would be a normal day. The sun was shining through my curtains, and I could hear the birds singing. Everything looked peaceful, just like always. I got out of bed slowly, still half asleep, and walked to the kitchen to make my usual coffee. I turned on the kettle, yawned, and checked my phone. That was when I saw it, 10 missed calls from my boss. My heart started to beat faster as I opened the first message. It said, "Where are you? The meeting started 10 minutes ago." I quickly looked at the time again. It was actually 8:15 a.m., not 6:45. My phone had frozen, and I didn't notice it. I ran back to the bedroom and threw on the first clothes I could find. My hair was still messy, and I didn't even brush it. I grabbed my bag and left my apartment without my coffee or breakfast. It was a crazy start. When I reached the street, I saw that the bus was already leaving. I waved at the driver like a wild person, but he didn't stop. I decided to call a taxi, but my phone battery suddenly died. I almost screamed. I stood there, feeling helpless, when a bicycle delivery guy stopped next to me and asked if I was okay. I didn't know him, but I told him I was late for an important meeting. Then something strange happened. He offered me a ride. At first, I thought he was joking. I laughed and said, "Seriously?" But he smiled and said, "Hop on. It's faster than walking." I didn't have time to think. I jumped on the back of his bicycle and held tight. We rode through small streets, past traffic, and even over a few sidewalks. I felt the wind on my face, and people were looking at us with surprise. I was scared but also a little excited. I never imagined my morning would be like this. We reached my office building just in time. I thanked the guy and ran inside. My heart was still racing. I got to the meeting room and pushed the door open, but everyone was already there. All eyes turned to me. I apologized quickly and sat down. My boss didn't say anything. I thought maybe I was safe. I took a deep breath, opened my bag to take out my notebook, and then I saw the disaster. A cup of coffee from yesterday had spilled inside my bag. Everything was wet and sticky. While I tried to clean the mess quietly, my phone suddenly turned back on, with the volume on full. A loud ringtone started playing some silly pop song. Everyone turned to me again, and this time, my boss gave me a very serious look. I wanted to disappear. I turned it off fast and said sorry again. After that, I just sat still like a statue. I didn't say anything during the whole meeting. I kept thinking, can this day get any worse? After the meeting, I walked out with my bag still dripping coffee. I felt tired, embarrassed, and just wanted to go home. But then I saw the same delivery guy waiting near the entrance. He smiled at me and asked, "Did you make it in time?" I was surprised he was still there. I nodded and laughed a little. He said, "You looked like you were having a movie day." That made me smile for the first time that morning. He gave me his name, Leo, and then he left. I thought the worst part of the day was over, but I was wrong. When I got back home and reached for my keys, they were not in my bag. I checked every pocket, every corner, even the coffee-covered notebook. Nothing. I sat on the floor outside my apartment and sighed. I couldn't call anyone because my phone was still at 1%. I started to feel like I was in some comedy movie. Just then, my neighbor came home and saw me sitting there like a lost puppy. My neighbor is a quiet man in his 50s. We never talked much before. But today he stopped and asked if everything was okay. I told him I lost my keys and couldn't get in. He smiled and said, "You're lucky. I have a spare key to your place. The landlord gave it to me last year, just in case." I couldn't believe it. I almost cried with relief. He gave me the key, and I finally got inside. I promised myself I would make him cookies later to say thank you. I sat on the couch and let out a long sigh. I was finally home. I changed my clothes, washed my sticky bag, and charged my phone. Then I saw a new message. It was from Leo, the bicycle guy. I had forgotten he gave me his number when I got off the bike. He wrote, "If your day continues like this, call me. I'll bring a helmet." I laughed so hard I almost cried again, but this time with joy. Maybe this strange, awful day wasn't so bad after all. Just when I was about to relax, my phone rang. It was my mom. I completely forgot I had promised to call her the night before. I answered quickly and said, "Hi, Mom, I'm sorry, today was wild." But she didn't wait. She started telling me about her new neighbor who sings loudly every night. I wanted to tell her everything about my crazy day, but she kept talking about the noise and the neighbor's cat. I leaned back, listening, trying not to laugh. After the call, I changed into comfortable clothes and sat down with a cup of tea. Finally, some peace. Then the doorbell rang. I froze. I wasn't expecting anyone. I walked to the door and opened it slowly. To my surprise, Leo was standing there. He said, "I was in the area. I wanted to make sure you were okay." I blinked. Nobody ever checked on me like that before. It felt strange but also kind. I invited Leo in, even though my living room was a bit messy. He didn't seem to care. He sat down and accepted the tea I offered. We started talking. At first, it was about the morning ride and the meeting, but then we talked about our jobs, favorite books, and strange things we've seen on the street. It felt so natural, like we were old friends. I couldn't believe I had just met this man today. While we talked, I remembered my promise to bake cookies for my neighbor. I stood up and said, "Do you want to help me bake?" Leo laughed and said, "I'm terrible in the kitchen, but I'll try." We moved to the kitchen, found a recipe online, and started mixing ingredients. He spilled flour all over the counter, and I accidentally dropped an egg. We both laughed like teenagers. My stressful morning felt like a distant memory now. Just as the cookies started to smell good, I noticed smoke in the oven. I opened the door, and a cloud came out. The fire alarm went off loudly, and we had to open all the windows. I waved a towel in the air, trying to stop the noise. Leo ran to turn off the oven. We finally got the alarm to stop, but the cookies were black on the bottom. I looked at them and said, "They're cookies with a secret." Leo said, "A dark secret." Just when we sat down again, there was another knock. I opened the door and saw my neighbor, the one with the spare key. He looked a little worried. "Is everything okay?" I heard the alarm. I apologized and explained the cookie disaster. Then I handed him a small plate with the best-looking ones. He smiled and said, "They smell interesting." I thanked him again for the key, and he said, "Next time, let me know. I'm a pretty good baker." Later, while Leo and I watched a funny video on my phone, I saw a new message from my boss. I opened it, a bit nervous. It said, "Don't worry about this morning." We've all had days like that. By the way, your entrance was unforgettable. I felt a wave of relief. I laughed and showed it to Leo. He said, "See? Even your boss enjoyed the show." I replied, "I didn't plan on being today's main event." When Leo finally left in the evening, I stood by the door, thinking about the whole day. So many unexpected things happened: missing the bus, the bike ride, the coffee mess, the meeting disaster, the cookies, the fire alarm. But somehow, it all led to a day full of connection and laughter. I realized I had been living too carefully, always planning everything. Maybe surprises weren't so bad after all. I turned off the lights and got into bed. My room felt calm and warm. I looked at the ceiling and smiled to myself. My day was full of mistakes, but it was also full of new energy. I thought about Leo's face when he saw the burnt cookies and about my boss's message. I thought about how one frozen phone changed my schedule and maybe something more. Life really can surprise you when you least expect it. Before falling asleep, I wrote in my journal, "Today started as a disaster. I lost time, I lost my bus, I lost my cool, but I also found something. I found kindness in a stranger, support from a neighbor, and maybe a new friendship that I never planned." I closed the journal, turned off the lamp, and whispered to myself, today wasn't perfect, but it was beautiful in its own messy way. Then I smiled and let sleep take me. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. I stretched in bed and noticed the sunlight again, but this time it felt different. I wasn't rushing. I didn't feel panic. I made coffee slowly and watched it drip into my favorite mug. For once, I didn't check my phone immediately. I just stood by the window, holding the warm cup in my hands, thinking about how yesterday had changed something small inside me. When I finally checked my phone, there was a message from Leo. He had written, "Morning. I woke up dreaming about burnt cookies. Hope your smoke alarm survived the night." I laughed out loud in my kitchen. I typed back, still alive, but it's nervous now. I wasn't used to smiling at my phone first thing in the morning, but I liked it. It felt easy. It felt refreshing. At the office, things were calm. My coworkers smiled at me in a new way, almost like they had seen a fun side of me they didn't know before. One of them said, "That bike entrance yesterday, legendary." I smiled and shook my head. I wasn't usually the one people talked about, but this time I didn't mind. Even my boss looked more relaxed with me. It was as if the mistake made me more human. During lunch, I sat outside with my notebook. I wrote random thoughts, as I often did, but something new came into my mind, a small idea for a story. A woman, late for a meeting, ends up on a delivery bike and accidentally finds adventure. It made me smile. I wasn't a writer, but suddenly, I wanted to try. Maybe the wild day had given me more than just memories. Maybe it gave me inspiration. That afternoon, I received a call from an old friend I hadn't spoken to in over a year. "I saw your name in a comment on someone's post," she said. We talked for almost an hour. She had moved cities and changed jobs. I told her about my week, and she laughed when I told her about the cookies and the smoke. She said, "You sound different. Happier." I paused. "Maybe I am," I answered. After work, I usually went straight home. But that day, I decided to walk through the park instead. The air smelled like grass and something sweet, maybe cotton candy from a food truck nearby. I saw kids playing, people walking dogs, couples holding hands. It all felt like a quiet movie scene. For some reason, I didn't feel alone like I sometimes did. I felt like I was inside the story, not just watching from the outside. I sat on a bench near the small lake in the park. A woman with a large hat and two small dogs sat next to me. We didn't talk at first, but then she suddenly said, "Do you ever feel like life gives you a little push?" I turned to her and nodded. Yes. Just yesterday, actually. She smiled like she already knew. She said nothing else, just sat quietly. It was a strange moment, but peaceful. Later, at home, Leo texted again. This time, he asked if I'd like to grab dinner the next day. Not coffee, not cookies, dinner. I stared at the message for a moment. My heart beat a little faster. I hadn't been on a real dinner date in a long time. I typed back, yes. As long as you promise not to bring burnt cookies. He replied, deal. But only if you promise not to set anything on fire. We were even. That night, as I brushed my teeth, I looked at myself in the mirror. Same face, same hair, same pajamas. But something felt different. I saw a woman who could laugh at her own disasters, who said yes to a bike ride, who opened her door to a stranger and didn't regret it. I smiled at my reflection and thought, I like her more than the old version of me. I got into bed feeling excited, not just tired. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, and for once, I didn't try to plan at all. Maybe life didn't need to be perfect to be beautiful. Maybe it just needed to be real, messy, and full of little surprises. As I closed my eyes, I whispered, let's see what tomorrow wants to teach me. The next day felt different. I woke up early again, but not because of stress. I actually enjoyed the quiet before the world started moving. I chose my clothes carefully, not to impress anyone, but because I wanted to feel good. I even did something new with my hair. I looked at myself in the mirror and said, you're going out with someone you barely know, and that's okay. Work passed like a soft breeze. I finished my tasks, smiled more, and didn't check the time every 5 minutes. Even my coworkers noticed. One of them asked, you're glowing, what happened? I laughed and said, maybe I just had a really strange Monday. In my head, I knew that something deeper was happening. I was no longer waiting for life to feel exciting. I had opened the door, and something came in. Leo picked me up outside my office. He looked a little nervous, which made me feel less nervous myself. We went to a small place with warm lights and quiet music. It wasn't fancy, but it felt right. We didn't talk about big things. We talked about silly things, favorite pizza toppings, childhood mistakes, the worst movies we've ever seen. But somehow, those small things made me feel connected to him. At the end of dinner, Leo looked at me with a strange expression. Can I tell you something? He asked. I nodded. He took a deep breath and said, yesterday, when I saw you running after the bus, I wasn't sure if I should stop. But something told me I had to. I smiled. You saved my day, I said. He shook his head. No, you saved mine. I was having a terrible week. Then you jumped on my bike like a superhero in sneakers. After dinner, we walked together through the quiet streets. I didn't want the evening to end, but I didn't feel pressure. He didn't try to be perfect. I didn't try to be impressive. We were just two people who had a strange start and somehow ended up here. When we reached my building, he said, "Can I see you again soon?" I said, "Only if you don't bring your delivery bag." He laughed. Deal. The rest of the week passed in small but meaningful ways. I cleaned my apartment, not because it was dirty, but because I wanted to enjoy my space more. I called my mom again and really listened this time. I even started writing that story I thought of earlier. It felt good to create something. I wasn't bored anymore. I wasn't stuck in my old routine. I was moving, little by little. One evening, a small package arrived at my door. There was no name on it. Inside, I found a single cookie, slightly burnt on the bottom, in a plastic box. There was a note that said, "For emergencies. Do not eat unless your day becomes truly terrible." I laughed so hard I dropped the note. It was from Leo, of course. He had written batch number 2 will be better. Promise. That night, I had a dream. In it, I was riding a bicycle, but this time I was alone. I wasn't scared. The road was long, but the sky was clear. I woke up feeling light, like I could handle anything. I wrote it down in my journal. Sometimes, life gives you the wrong time, the wrong bus, and the wrong bag, just so you can find the right people, the right direction, and the right version of yourself. On Sunday morning, I opened my phone and saw a new message from Leo. It said, "Want to go for a walk? No bikes this time, I promise." I replied, "Sure. But if we get lost, you're buying ice cream." He sent back, "Deal." Getting lost sounds like a perfect plan. I smiled. My week began in chaos, but now, I was ready to say yes, to walks, to surprises, and to something new. Looking back, I still don't know how one messy day turned into something this meaningful. I just know that I stopped trying to control everything, and the world responded by giving me something better than I had planned. It started with a broken phone and a missed bus. But it became a story, not just one I lived, but one I wanted to keep telling. Not just a day. My day. The one that opened all the other days after it.